Sister Philippa is a journalist and radio presenter, having worked for BBC Radio in the UK for many years, including 7 years as one of the voices of Women's Hour. She's now the coordinator of a national project, 100 Women of Spirit, which recognizes the spiritual contribution to society made by women. She's an ordained interfaith minister and has studied Raj Yoga meditation with the Brahma Kumaris for more than 40 years. Sister, welcome. Thank you so much. And we have a special guest here. Sister Ingrid joined us last night from all the way from Mississippi. Welcome. It's a pleasure to have you here. We had Sister Ingrid in one of our purity series, I think a year before last, but I don't know if you all remember, but let me read her introduction. Sister Ingrid Honkala, PhD, a marine biologist, NASA oceanographer, and international speaker, has had 3 near-death experiences. So it's going to be an interesting topic today. She has had 3 near-death experiences. She was also gifted with the wise input of being of light who gave her invaluable insights and assistance. Ingrid shares how any human experience can be illuminated from within when we are in alignment with inner guidance. In her autobiography, A Brightly Guided Life, is this the book? No, this is a different book. It's Dying to See the Light. So this is her book, A Bright Guided Life, How a Scientist Learned to Hear Her Inner Wisdom. Ingrid details her amazing journey with the being of light. Sister Ingrid, thank you for accepting our invitation and thank you for being here with us. A huge round of applause. And now I ask Sister Asmi to welcome them with yellow roses. She's going to pin it on your... Thank you.
Om Shanti, good morning. And thank you, Sister Jyoti, for your lovely welcome and introductions. It feels very strange to be with you in the same room as you're giving the introduction, because normally you're on a little window on the computer screen. And it really is such a joy to be here in person with you in the physical form. And I shall now have a very clear picture of this room and all of you when we do any future programs. So thank you to Ranjan and the family here in Dallas for the invitation to come and join you. And I've learned now that the yellow rose is of Texas. So it means now that we're part of the Texas family, that we have the yellow rose as well. So Ingrid, let me just welcome you myself. We've met a few times before, and it's always a pleasure to hear Ingrid's story because it very much is in alignment with our own understanding of the spiritual realm here at the Brahma Kumaris. So just to give you a few other details, Ingrid is originally from Bogota in Colombia, now living, as Jyoti said, in Mississippi, just about an hour and a half north of New Orleans. And Ingrid is a marine biologist by profession, and she has her PhD in oceanography, and she worked as an oceanographer for NASA. So she was a NASA scientist and also for the US Navy. So it means that she's, got both military and academic experience, and she even taught at universities as a professor. And Ingrid had her first near-death experience. I think she was 2.5, not quite 3 yet. And she went on to have, a few more such experiences. And these experiences absolutely transformed her life and gave her a first-hand experience of what happens when we die. And as Jyoti said, her new book has been out for a little while now, Dying to See the Light. It's become an Amazon bestseller. And people all around the world have really wanted to hear more about this topic of who are we? Who are we really? And what does happen to us when we die? So, Ingrid, these aren't kind of light topics, but you're finding that people around the world are really ready and wanting to know about these aspects. You've had a good response.
Yes, yes, and incredibly, it's been a lifetime waiting for this moment because I was a little child when I already started to receive these messages that someday I was going to share, but I had to wait. And finally, now that the door is opening, and I think people always wanted to know, they just were fearful to touch this subject. And then now that I think internet and all this is giving us permission, people started to share and open, and now people really want to know. And there's been an incredible opening and wanting to know, yes.
And I suppose as well, because of the times that we're living in, there's so much challenge for each and every one of us, not just in the world around us, but in our personal lives. We're being challenged on so many levels. And it's when we're in a place of anxiety, confusion, that perhaps we're more open to these eternal questions of the truth of who we are.
Yeah, I think that if we are sitting in the couch, relaxing and doing nothing, then there's no urge. There's no sense of urgency. Then there's no really evolution. But the moment that we're too comfortable sitting in the couch, the bell, or the hunger, or a flooding, or an earthquake, something is going to move us out of that chair. That is going to bring us into ask questions and bring us into action. So I think this is the time in which the shaking is happening. We see a world that is in a lot of turmoil, and these questions start coming up in the mind of people. Why this is happening? Why me? Why all this hardship? Why is this life for? What is all of this for? And those are the questions that we need to start looking within.
And these are the questions that we come across on the spiritual journey. And as we're saying, for each of us, we arrive at that point at a time which is right for us, when we're ready to really look at ourselves deeply and ask these bigger questions. But for you, Ingrid, you were kind of thrown onto this spiritual inquiry at such a young age. And it would be nice to just hear the story of what happened in that first near-death experience. As I said, you were not quite 3 years old in Bogota, at home with the nanny who was looking after you, and your mother had left to go to work. And you and your sister were playing, you're playing ball, but not just in the yard. You were playing ball across a huge water tank that went with the house. And you were throwing the ball to each other across the water tank. And you just leaned a little too far across to pick up the ball out of the water, and you lost your balance and you fell in. And of course, being only nearly 3 years old, you didn't know how to swim. And so, of course, you fell down to the bottom of this quite deep water tank, which was freezing cold and very dark. And what happened then?
What happened then was the miracle, I would say. Because imagine, people ask me the question usually, like, how can you remember this? You were so little. And that's the part that I come and say, how can I forget? First, drowning is one of the most terrifying experiences somebody can have. Because if you think about it, stop breathing and see what happened. You're going to call for a desperate breath. And not knowing that if you fall into water, you drown, and suddenly you're experiencing that was terrifying. So I say, how can I forget that? Starting from there. After that, I always like to mention the word contrast. As you mentioned, this tank was big, was entirely made of cement, and it was a dark space. So the last thing I saw with my eyes open in that struggle was darkness. And then suddenly it's like the struggle ended. And I went from that horror to a state of absolute peace. I didn't know what happened. I just knew that I didn't need to escape out of the tank. I didn't need to breathe. I didn't need to go anywhere. And that suddenly that darkest space turned into light. And there was a light that came from below. And it was like bright enough to illuminate the whole surrounding. So even my feeling was that now there is light. And there was another very strong contrast. The last thing I heard, imagine when you're all scared, you're in terror, the heart beating like a drum, boom, boom, boom. And I could hear it in my head. And when I went into this state of peace, silence. And it's the silence that I call the silence behind the silence, because it's that silence with so much peace. And I used to live in a house that was very noisy too. As a Latino family, there was always music, and we have birds and my sisters. And now there was none of it. And let me tell you, this silence was so incredibly good that even after the experience, I crave that silence. So how can I forget? It was years. I will hide in closets, under the bed, under the sheets. I wanted that silence back. And it took me years to understand that that was not an outer silence, that it was an inner silence. So now imagine, I am in the light, I am in the silence. Oh, this is so good. And then I started to see bubbles, and the bubbles were shining with light. And with that childlike spirit, still at that moment, I'm like, bubbles. And I started to chase the bubbles. And it was when I was chasing the bubbles that I turned around and I saw my body. And I have the clear knowledge, the realization, oh, that's my body. And I didn't feel afraid. And it felt familiar, like, oh, yeah, that's my body. The only thing that shocked me and that stayed in my mind as a shocking factor was seeing the eyes open. And you know how we say that the eyes are the mirror of the soul? These eyes were empty. And that's why it shocked me. It was the sense, oh, that's just like an empty costume. There's nothing there. And then it came the next contrast. I was born as a very sick child. And I spent almost 3 years feeling unwell. So I didn't even know anything else other than being sick. So now imagine feeling the state of absolute well-being. So the moment I look at the body, I'm like, I'm not going back there. And I made the decision, the conscious decision of turning around and leaving the body. And when I turned around and I started to see flowers, and the flowers are blooming from nowhere. And now I'm being picked by the flowers and I'm just floating and just having a blast. And it's in that moment when in just a blink, I appear in the nanny's room. And she is listening to soap operas in the radio. And let me tell you, this is so clear in my mind that I can't even remember the soap opera she was listening in the radio. If you ask a 2-year-old, oh, what your parents were listening at 2, you don't remember this. But this is how clear these memories are. And then the moment I see her, I said, oh, that's Maria. Nothing happened with Maria. So in another blink, I appear floating above my mom. And my mom, she was walking. She was far away from the house. I always like to give a little bit of backstory there because my mom had got a new job. What happened when you get a new job? All you're thinking is about your new job. She's all nervous, anxious about her new job. No, the moment I appear floating above her, I said, oh, that's mom. My mom stopped. She knew immediately something is happening at home with one of my children. And she forgot all about her job. So I could say 2 things, very strong things about this. My mom had a very strong intuition, but she listened to that intuition. And she turned around and started to run back home. She was a few blocks away. And I'm looking at her from above and I'm like, oh, I wonder why mom is running. And then at the end of the street, I see a dog and I love animals and I got distracted and forgot about my mom. And the moment I felt the desire to be with the dog, I am with the dog. I'm like, whoa, this is fun. And then I felt the desire to be, I saw a park and I felt the desire to be in the park. I am in the park. And now I'm like, oh, this is a fun game. And I started to play a game of going places. So this is the moment of like, I see that clarity about time and space completely changed. And when I'm playing this game in another blink, now I appear in a realm that was made of pure, shiny, bright, white light. And wow, this was the first time in my almost 3 years that I felt, oh, I am home. I am home. And what is home? Home is the feeling of feeling welcome and embraced and cozy. And is why you call it home is because you recognize it, because you know it. And then, you know how I say that I saw my body in the water? Up to that moment, I really did not ask who I was. And it's funny because people say, how can you say that you turn around and you did this and that if you're not this body? But look at that's the part when we can understand body consciousness. As long as you still identify with the body, you still thinking you are a body. So up to that moment, I didn't know what I was. And when I experienced home is when I realized, I am not that. I am not that body. I'm not that persona. And I realize myself as a being of light. And it's when I started to feel connection with everything. And I started to feel the sense of just expansion, just connection. But I was still having a sense of self. But even that sense of self at some moment disappeared. And I experienced what I call nothingness. Some call it emptiness, some call it non-self. And people say, oh, what is this nothingness? That's a scary thing. But it took me many years to put this into words, because not even me understood or knew how to express it. So to come to this place of explain this nothingness, I'm going to give an analogy. So imagine that there's a huge stadium. And in the middle of the stadium, there's a little tiny box. And all I thought I was is that box. And suddenly this little tiny box opens up. And it realized, wow, it's nothing, because it's nothing I thought I was. This description, this narrative, these beliefs, this what, even I was only 3. But at the same time, wholeness, totality. So it was the sense of expansion, the sense of, probably this is the most difficult part to explain about the whole experience, but if I could put it into words, I would just say it's the space of no narrative, no description, no color, no meaning. I could just say, and we were talking about that today, pure potential, pure consciousness, absolute presence. And when I am in this state of being, just being, my mom finally arrived home. And this is the other thing. We lived in a big house, and she knew exactly where to go. Because, of course, the body cannot hold, this is the biology. So she's like, if she wastes more time, this would not be possible. My mom just rushed to the back of the house. And my oldest sister was still there trying to get me out of the tank. And people ask, why she didn't call the lady? And she's like, because we didn't supposed to be playing in the tank. So
you're going to be told off.
so I would be scolded. So she's trying to help me. And she said to my mom, Ingrid is there and I cannot get her. Now look at the other incredible synchronicity. My mom worked with children. And she had been trained, some kind of training in doing CPR for children.
Resuscitation.
Otherwise, she didn't know what to do. And then she said when she pulled me out of the tank, I was like a raggedy doll. No pulse, no breathing, completely pale. And then she started to do all she knew. I didn't feel anything. I was in my state of beingness there, feeling, I think there's not really emotion that could describe this, but if I would use any kind of emotion, I could just say bliss.
Bliss, yeah.
Bliss. And then suddenly I felt that I had jumped from the tallest building in the world. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. But I resisted. And I was like, no. And I felt like I'm being pulled, like I'm being vacuumed back. And then suddenly I knew I was in the body when the feelings of the coldness and again, this body that didn't feel well. And imagine, remember the little box? I went from whoop, back in the box. So that sense of freedom and expansion got reduced to the box. And I was very unhappy. And people ask me, how could you be unhappy? You should be grateful that you were rescued and brought back. And I'm like, no, imagine another analogy. Imagine that they take you to an amusement park. Your first time in Disney, and you're having all the fun in the world. And suddenly they say, it's time to go. You're going to be mad. You want to be there. And that's the feeling that stayed with me for many, 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 many years after that.
It's very interesting that, you know, before the age where you could have had any concept of what happens when you die, you were experiencing this expansion, this freedom. You were able to have a thought and suddenly be where you wanted to be. And this is all very interesting for each of us to think on, that, you know, death is not a sad event. It's an event of being released from the limitations of your physical body into a much more expanded part of yourself. And it's also interesting how you went to the maid, to the nanny, and obviously your presence didn't awaken anything in her, and yet you went to your mother, and because of the connection that you have with your mum, she was able to pick up that something was wrong. And that shows how our communication with our loved ones continues after we have crossed over to the other side, and that there is still that connection that we can experience and express. It's an interesting observation and insight.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned this, because one of the messages actually from this experience is to bring that power of connection, to bring that message. Because as you said, you know, this is an incredible thing, because there was a moment that I said, but I wasn't planning to come back. And then I got the insight, the clarity that now one thing is the needs of the ego, and one thing is the purpose of the soul. My ego mind didn't want to come back to a body that didn't feel well, but that was ego, because the ego never wants to feel discomfort. But my purpose was to come back. Reason why I went to look for the maid and I went to look for my mom. Why would I do that otherwise if I wasn't planning to come back? Then I asked in one of these insights, then, okay, if I was planning to come back, then why did I waste time going to the lady's room, to the maid's room? Why didn't I just go directly to my mom? And look at this word contrast is back again. To show you contrast. Look what happened with the maid. There was no connection. This lady actually mistreated us. So look what happened when there is no connection. I got the clear message, when there is no connection, they will let you drown. When there's no connection, there's division, there's war. What happened with my mom? Far away from the house, and she knew where I was. And it's when I got that clear message. Love doesn't have barriers. You are the living proof that the connection between the spirit world and the physical world is real. And then that's how we can see with that clarity that the limitations are just in the mind.
So you very much experienced that after you came back into your body. You weren't that pleased about being back in the body, and you went around telling people, I'm not Ingrid.
Yes.
And they were like, okay, who are you then? And you're like, I don't need a name. So, you know, this experience was very hard for you to absorb and connect back into your old life, because you had been changed by the experience and you felt different from other children. And the profound sense of peace that you had experienced, like you said, stayed with you very strongly. But your mom, and particularly your grandmother, recognized that you were going through something, and they supported you, and they actually encouraged you to have confidence in these experiences and teach you a little bit about spirituality. How important was that to you?
I think that was absolutely important because one, my mom offered the validation. Children need to be validated. And when my mom validated that what I was experiencing was real, I have to say that this is also because my mom had some gifts that I didn't know until that moment. But at a school, I started to do drawings of things I was seeing. I started to communicate with what I call beings of light. Every time I went to sleep, I could access the realm of the light back again. And I started to see lights. I started to communicate. And one of these beings one day was shining like gold. And it shaped itself into a human form and it touched me. And I said, you are a being of light. And imagine everybody, if I would tell these things, it's like, oh God, this child is making all these stories and this child is, what is this? What is going on? Imagine how difficult this was because I'm seeing things and I experience things that nobody understood. And it's when I start drawing at a school. And then my mom, the teacher called my mom because the teacher was like, oh, this child is having imaginary friends because I was different. Maybe I can tell you something that validated, because this validation part is so important, that this girl or this child came differently, was that right after my near-death experience, I'm telling you, I'm just going to be 3 years old. And very, very fast, now I can read, I can write, I can put together complex puzzles, I can understand mathematical problems because I already came back with awareness, an awareness I didn't have before. And I had the children only reach the capacity of abstract mind when they're 5 or 7. I came back with it. And in my mind, it was the sense, I am not learning anything, I'm just remembering. So at school, you can imagine, I was a very weird child. And I was challenging the teacher and asking questions. So when they called my mom and they started to show all these drawings to my mom, I just had to voice myself and say, Mom, but these are my friends. And they discovered that I could see also auras. All this stuff was normal to me. So I think I spent most of my life trying to understand why others couldn't see, not why I could. So my mom later on the way home and in front of the teacher, she's like, oh, no, nothing is happening. This is just a phase, because she didn't want me to be in trouble. And on our way to home, she says, I believe you because I also can see things that others cannot see. And my mom could see what we call spirits. And then, so imagine that validation. Now I am not alone seeing things. And then it came my grandmother, which I think she's crucial in all this development, because if there's no one that brings clarity, this just stays as experience and a very confused one. So probably I would remain as a child in a very dark, confused place. But my grandmother was a very rebellious woman, and she was raised as a Catholic, but she always said there has to be more. There has to be more. She had this need to learn, this sense that something else was beyond this teaching she was receiving. And she joined an order called the Rosicrucian order that was teaching deeper spirituality. And then after that, she started to learn Buddhism and Hinduism and Kabbalah and everything. And she started to bring these teachings to our home. And I was already having all these very profound insights. I was already receiving teachings, and I said, oh, Grandma speaks like the beings of light. So Grandma started to bring spirituality into my life and clear my mind. And I was a little one, and she was taking me to all these meetings, and I started to listen. But of course, it took many years to integrate and put together and understand all that happened. But my grandmother was
She was very important.
fundamental. Yeah.
Sounds like you were born into just the right family for you to have these experiences and have them validated and explained. And you went on to have quite a troubled teenage life because you never really could fit in or feel like you belonged. And your search for truth and understanding has been lifelong, and it continues to this day. What do you have a sense of in terms of your understanding now of who we are as individuals? Because you talk a lot about the light that you experienced and the realization that we ourselves are also the form of light.
Yeah.
Could you say something about the importance of light?
It's everything. You know, I like to give the example of, imagine a car. Beautiful, it could be any model, anything, beautiful car. But the car in itself, it cannot do anything. Leave it there, it will never move. It could have the greatest engine, everything, but it would never do anything if it doesn't have a driver. So it's just that knowing we are the spark of light that makes this physical reality be what it is.
So we are the driver of the vehicle.
We are the driver.
Unless it's a driverless car, which happens a little nowadays. So I don't know where the soul is in the driverless car. Don't know how well they drive anyway. So this body is like our car and we are driving it. And our understanding here in Raj Yoga is that we drive it from this place here, which is the center of the forehead. So kind of behind the eyes. And this would be like the windscreen of the car, and we're looking out through the windscreen, and we are the ones who are driving the car. But our consciousness is in the form of a tiny point of light, a star, which is eternal. And that's the truth of who we are as human beings. It's the soul plus the body that makes us into a human being.
And we are eternal beings, and we never really truly die. It's just we change costume, and that's what I saw in every one of my near-death experiences. And the beauty of all this is the fear was gone.
Mm.
Fear was completely gone, and I could just experience myself in the full of who I am, an eternal being, devoid of all fear and just expansion. And it's just incredibly amazing.
So how can we, benefit ourselves from the experience that you had in terms of applications in our everyday lives? What have you learned about using this experience that you had and ways of dealing and coping with the challenges in life that you have had, which have been many for you and for all of us?
Yes, I want to, with this, also bring the clarity, because some people may think, oh, if it's so good there, why you're here? Or why to be here? See? And I just have come to discover that this realm, this human experience is, and I've been mentioning the word contrast, is the one that gives us the contrast to remember who we truly are, because otherwise we don't remember. And in my last near-death experience, it was like closing a cycle, and it's when I have the clarity that it was not really about near-death experience. I have the clarity it is about near-life experience. How I live my life to the fullest. How I use everything that is in the way as the way. How I use every moment not to be nasty about myself or punish myself, but to praise myself. There was a day I was doing a walking meditation. And in this walking meditation, you're supposed to be listening to the birds and feeling your steps and feeling the wind. And then I arrived home and I realized, whoa, today I didn't hear any bird. I didn't feel any wind. First thing we do, we punish ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not good enough. Oh, you should know better, blah, blah. And at that moment, something happened. For the first time, I had the realization, I am aware that I was not aware. And instead of being mad at myself, I started to use this to praise my awareness. And from that day on, I was patting myself in the shoulder. What about I start being loving and kind to myself and use every moment of challenge as an opportunity to remind myself, you're being aware. So that way, I start becoming a being that is more aware of my actions and using all these challenges as a way to be more present, to be more loving, to be more kind, to be more aware.
Because from the perspective of your experience, you were in this blissful state, but you were outside of the field of action. And yet the gift of being in a body is that we can experience and we can learn and we can grow and we can change.
Yes, yes. And we can use the whole of it to evolve. And, if we think about it, how many people say, even if it was the most difficult experience in life, you might not know it at the moment. So in the moment that you emerge or you're suffering or you're having a bad moment, just learn to be compassionate and practice self-love and be loving to others. Have the empathy and the compassion to understand that moment. But if you ask most of the people later, years or months, on what that experience brought you, they might say, oh no, I learned this. Or I grew up in this, or I opened an organization in the name of my son or my daughter, or in this illness, or whatever it is, there's always something that have brought us to grow and evolve. And if not with enough, we can even say, I learned to be more compassionate. I learned to be stronger. I learned to be more patient. I learned there's always a learning. How can that be a learning if there was something that is being hard, that is pulling me to think, no, that's not good.
Mm-hmm.
But there's always something that at the end of the day, and if you have not been able to see it, I recommend people go and write a list, not of what didn't work. Start putting your awareness in what has worked. Look, if nothing else, I'm sitting here today alive, despite all the hardship. So that's one. Look at how strong I am. Look at how resilient I am. Look at how wise I am. Look at, I was able to come out of this. Wow, I have to be some tough cookie. So it's like, give check marks to yourself.
So it's a very different way of looking at life, really, isn't it? It's not thinking of the challenges that we experience as being annoying and wanting to get through them as quickly as possible, but they are what is enabling us to grow and evolve as human beings. So see the positive challenge that lies within that. What is the importance of gratitude, would you say, even when things aren't going well?
Everything. And I have to say something also before that is part of the journey of the soul.
Mm.
And I love a friend that says, the soul didn't come here to be, sorry about the word, but she said, the soul didn't come here to be stupid. The soul came here to show, look at me. Look what I can do. Because the soul has all these virtues of power, of joy, of wisdom, of strength, imagine a soul that is misused. Lying on the couch doing nothing, that soul will be like, after a while, like, I'm bored. I want to do something. You could be in the greatest beach in Hawaii drinking margaritas, and after 2 months, 3 months of doing that, you'll be like, what now? Because the soul wants to show, it wants to say, look what I can do. So that is also one of the amazing things of the evolution of who we are, is show all these virtues. You know, I always say, if the core of what you are is joy and pureness and wisdom and happiness and greatness, then the true question is, what am I doing not to be that?
And what is your answer to that? Why do we not experience ourselves for the great beings that we are?
Because we keep the mind in the negative bias, in saying, I'm not good enough, instead of saying, oh, look, good job, you're aware that you were not aware. It's just changed the way we perceive. I said, nothing is happening. I remember when I had this absolute awareness, nothing is happening to me, it's happening for me. And that's when gratitude, that's how I wanted also to bring us to that place of gratitude. I remember when I realized, if nothing is happening to me, but for me, what is to forgive? Or I could just say, everything was forgiven. And I entered into this place, the place of gratitude. I would just say, thanks to this, I have become this. Thanks to this, I have this understanding. Thanks to this, I'm more compassionate. Thanks to this, I am stronger. Thanks to this, I'm more mature. And I'm like, there's nothing I could not find as something to be thankful for.
Mhm.
And this is the other part. I have met people that were so, let's say, so abused, so sad, so mistreated, that they could say, Ingrid, I cannot go and remember a moment of happiness. Don't even bring me there. What are you talking about? And the way we were able to completely shift that was using practices of gratitude. How? I would just say, even when we use the word appreciation, and I would just bring the person to remember. I said, remember a moment, a simple moment, when you were hungry and you had something to eat. Oh, yeah. When you were thirsty, oh, very thirsty, and you had something to drink. Oh, yeah, that was good. When you were tired and you were offered a bed. When you were sad and somebody hugged you. Oh, yeah, that was good. Look what happened. Something inside softened. And that's when you start knowing that place of something is soft in your heart. And I say to people, gratitude is the highest vibrational frequency there is. And people say, isn't it love? Then I said, okay, look, what are the things you feel grateful for? Oh, the things that make me feel great, like that glass of water, like that bed, like that hug. And what are the things that make you feel great? The things that you love. So love and gratitude are synonyms. So if you start knowing gratitude and being grateful, you can start experiencing true love.
So that's a very practical thing that anyone can do if they're feeling down in their life or feeling that things aren't going so well, you can start a gratitude journal
Yeah.
and just find the things in your life that you can be grateful for. And that opens a pathway for more things to come for you to have gratitude for.
Yeah.
And it turns things around. Is there something physiologically changing in the body when we go from a state of feeling sorry for ourselves, depressed, and having gratitude? Is something actually happening on the physical level?
Yes, completely. And this is the part where if you think about any teaching, they're always talking about body, mind, spirit. You never leave the body behind because unity is considering everything. You have to be coherent. You have to be aligned. So for this, the body has to be part. Then yes, what happened when you're practicing gratitude, when you're doing practices of quieting the mind, when you're feeling well, you stop releasing hormones of stress, cortisol, adrenaline. When the body is full of these chemicals, these substances, there's inflammation in the body. And imagine the poor body is just like a ball of mess. It cannot even digest. The heart is having problems. The organs are having problems. And the moment that you start releasing hormones of well-being, imagine you think, oh, and any practice of gratitude is simple. I say your coffee in the morning, just, smell it before you drink it. This feels good. I call it a candy for the soul. And the moment you do that, you release hormones of well-being, and then it feels good. And you start replacing cortisol by a new chemistry of hormones that are going to make you feel relaxed and well. And then all this inflammation start to reduce in the body, and your organs are now working fine. And if you're feeling fine in the body, you're feeling fine in the mind, and you can feel good in your spirit. So it's all tied together. There's a science article now that I read because they're working a lot now in understanding what mindfulness and what all these practices do to the body. And they discovered that cortisol is more addictive than heroin itself.
Really?
So what happens if you're addicted to cortisol? You want more. And without knowing, and people say, why all this happens to me? Because without knowing, we're looking for things that are going to add more cortisol to the body. Why am I fighting with this person? Why am I seeing everything with negative eyes? Because we want more. The only way to stop this is, I say, make a list of things that make you feel great. Simple. Simple. I love this sentence that says, God is simple. The rest is complicated. So grab simple things. This shower I taken. That's so good, this shower. This bed, so warm. This coffee. Then what happened? The subconscious mind doesn't know the difference. It just knows how you feel. And the moment you release these hormones of well-being, you start changing the chemistry. And now that's the part where we're talking about neuroplasticity. You start creating new neural paths. And then you start now creating a complete new system based on, not in the negative bias, but this feels good. And from there, the change happens across all levels.
So you're feeling better because actually the chemistry in your body is supporting you to feel better.
Yes.
It's a natural reason. And I know exactly what you mean about people being addicted to cortisol. And I can think of one relationship that I have where out of nowhere, suddenly there's an argument arisen. And it's like, are you just drawing me into an argument because you need that cortisol flowing through your system? And it's like, okay, that's your story. I'm not going to play that game. So you go and be angry with someone else because I'm not playing that game. We talked about the role of gratitude. What would you say about the importance of carving out times of silence to really reconnect with yourself and feel great again?
Very, very important. We need to learn to quiet the mind. Because imagine, just even think about it. Imagine being in a discotheque 24/7. That's the mind, full of noise, thoughts all the time. And then you don't have a space. It's exhausting. When you go to sleep, I don't think we even sleep well. All those dreams is because the mind needs to get rid of all the stuff that is in the head. But people say, oh, I don't have time to quiet, Mama. I don't have time to meditate. I'm very busy. I said, oh, you can make it easy. Don't make your life hard. I said, what do you do when you're heating the water for your coffee? Looking at your phone? Give yourself that candy for the soul. I said, what about one conscious breath? Just go. How long did that take you? Seconds. So if you don't start doing that, give yourself a pause. And I talk about a practice I do, and I call it pause. The P of presence. The A of allowing. Allow things as they are. Sometimes give yourself the chance to allow things as they are. Don't fight. It's always fighting. It's exhausting. That breath, the U of union. The moment that you allow things as they are, you are in unity. Then the S of serenity. Silence. A moment of serenity. And one of the teachings I received, one of the very powerful insights was wisdom comes from the place of silence. Power comes from the place of silence. Only when you're silent, you can connect with inner wisdom. You stop being reactive and you become response able. And then the E of expansion. If you have wisdom, if you have a moment of like clarity, understanding, peace, you feel expansion. Look at in one word, pause, what you can get.
So you've given us something very practical there. Whenever we boil the kettle, use that time rather than just cleaning the surface or whatever, just use the time that the kettle is boiling to take a moment of pure presence and just come into that feeling of connection with yourself and smell the coffee and have a appreciation, gratitude. Take a moment of pause. Think about what the letters PAUSE stand for. I don't know what you do if you don't drink coffee. You'd have to come up with a new set of practices, but we'll do it for a cup of tea as well, just as it works just as well for a cup of tea. I'm wondering, when we're in our darkest moments and it feels like there's no way forwards, there's no way back, there's no way forwards, and we feel really hopeless. And you have had these wonderful experiences of connecting with the light. What can we do if we haven't had those experiences? Is there a way of us, ordinary people, being able to connect to the light and draw that light into our own being to illuminate that moment of darkness?
The light is always, always there. We are the ones that, due to sadness, due to conditioning, due to anything that is there, we close that door. There was a moment that I said, when people say, how can you remember all your things that happened when you were so young? How can you remember? How can you remember? And I said, it's like the doors for me never close. Like the doors for me never close. And later in life, I finally got the clarity. And like, Ingrid, of course, the door never closed because there are no doors. What we call the light of consciousness, God, Baba, the source, whatever we want to call it, is here for us always. Always, always, always. The only thing we need to do is to want to feel it, to want to see it. And if we don't know how at the moment, and if you feel too trapped, ask for help.
Ask.
Ask, and look for a person, look for a connection. Look, don't stay alone. And that's part of being self-loving and self-compassionate. Put yourself in the, and when I experienced what we call the dark night of the soul too. And there was a moment in which I was in a state of so despair. And I went into prayer, and I wasn't even praying at the moment. I was too busy being a scientist. And in that moment of prayer, I said, please, God, help me see. But I wasn't in my prayer asking God to change things. I was asking for clarity. God, help me see, because I cannot see. I have lost the way. And the answer I felt in my heart I received was, look for help. And the help came in the sense of, in that moment, I went to look for psychologists in my area. See, it just, you feel it, connect with that sense. Don't be alone. And then that very day, a synchronicity happened. I wrote the name of a doctor I found in my area. I found his name, I wrote it. That very day, 2 more people mentioned the same doctor.
So that was confirmation.
That was confirmed.
He was the right one. Yeah.
And I went and I started to talk to this person, and it gave me it was a very spiritual person. But what I say is, don't ask and don't be alone. Don't allow yourself to.
I mean, I don't think it's breaking confidence is to say the state that you were in, because you wrote about it in your first book. But you were in such a dark place that you were actually contemplating not continuing in this life.
I did. Yes. So I have to, because sometimes people say, oh, you have these experiences, now you're all done. Look, you had it good, you got these clarities. No, it was very difficult to integrate. It was very difficult to have the sense of belonging. It was very difficult to get to the point where I had it clear. And I look for things at some point in my life that actually I felt that I wanted to belong and I wanted to be normal. And that brought me to cut with my spiritual path for a long time, because I thought that that was the way. And I realized that it actually was the opposite. It disconnected me from the truth that I am. And that was the thing that brought me to experience deep, deep depression. But thanks to that call, and thanks to, and it was allowing myself to be vulnerable, that at the end was what brought me back to, incredibly, talking to this doctor. There was a moment that he said to me to write a list of sufferings.
Write a list of?
The psychologist?
Yeah.
He told me to write a list of sufferings.
Of sufferings.
And then he said, oh, that's very cathartic to write. And I'm like, okay. So I wrote the list of sufferings. And when he read the list, he said, I've never met anyone that has suffered this much and is mentally stable.
Wow.
And then at that moment, something happened, a question that I think all of us is making through our life. And I asked so many times, why me? Why this is happening to me? And I was crying, why me? And then he's been listening to me almost for a year now. And it's not like he was taking notes and I'm going to go back to my notes. No, the moment I said, why me? He gave me the answer that turned the light back on. He said, why not? And he started to say, look, thanks to this, you have done this. Like I mentioned before, thanks to this, that, thanks to this. And he started to connect all the knots, and me too. And I'm like, and I started to see purpose behind everything. And at that moment, for the first time, I put myself at the level of the cause and not at the level of the effect. I stopped being a victim. But it took that self-care and that self-compassion and that self-love to look for help.
I mean, it's interesting if you look back over all your life experiences. At the time, it can feel like, why is this happening to me? And yet when you look back, you can see the reason why that came to you, because it enabled you to take the next step on your journey in a different way and, grow and expand. And it feels like your life has very much been one of integrating this very early experience of expanded consciousness with being a child in a small body, but also integrating your life as a scientist. You've been working with NASA, you've worked with the US Navy, you're a scientist, and yet you're also very much in this spiritual realm. For you, has that been a hard journey to blend those two together, or do you compartmentalize them and there is no joining point? How have you spanned such contrasting lives?
People ask me, how can you be a scientist and a spiritual being at the same time? And I just say, because before being a scientist, I was already spiritual. And it's also reframing like what being a spiritual means. And it's when I started to realize being a spiritual means to remember that you are a spirit, to remember that you are soul. But yes, of course, there was a moment in my life that in the wanting to be normal and to belong, I had to kind of close a door. But that was very important too, because it was a closing a door in the outer in reality, but in the inner, I always was holding the same principles of being a being of good. And that connection brought me to do very, very important projects that were seeking always to find, to bring consciousness, to bring clarity. So when I was working in Colombia with the Ministry of Environment for a huge project in mangrove ecosystems, it was not about prohibiting people from using the resources. It was teaching people to be conscious about their resources. So we created a project that was very successful because what I was doing always came from that place of connection. Later, I dedicated my life to work with climate change and to create consciousness and to write articles. And it was all always from that place. So even though in the outer world now I am not mentioning my spirituality, in the inner world that was operating. But of course, it came the moment when you have to just be full on with it. And then when the moment was right is when this whole sense of I have already separated too far from the truth that I am, because I became very busy, very, very busy with my career.
So talking about your career, what do you feel your drive is? What is it you're trying to achieve through writing these books? And now you're a global speaker at different events. What are you hoping to put across?
Now, with what I am doing nowadays is help others remember who they are. Like my second book the first book was more like an autobiography where I was telling and to bring others the clarity of like, look, all your challenges are your gifts. All your challenges is what is in the way is the way. That's my first book. And my second book is like a practical guide. In every chapter, there's questions that bring people to curiosity, to self-observation, to go within, and there's practices. So it's more like a guide. How can I
handbook. Mhm.
help people to remember? Look, I have to bring this to you. There was a moment when I had what I call the big awakening. And I was still working for NASA. And when I have this big awakening, I asked the universe, what can I say, or what can I do or say to these people? Because the urge, the need of wanting to share with others what I was experiencing happened. And then in that moment, I received a very important teaching that says, do or say nothing. Just be. The light of your awareness is all they need. So it's the part of be that you're realizing that you are. So that's what I go doing around. Be, walk your talk, be that. If I need healing, I work with that healing. This work because I was there.
I mean, that's quite a big realization for many of us who are so programmed to doing and achieving and being successful, being seen to be successful, and we run around trying to support these kingdoms that we've created, and yet maybe what we're being called to do in this time of delicate change is much more focus on just the quality of our being.
Yeah.
And that actually that will do as much as any of our doing.
Yeah, and what happened is that from the state of being, the doing and the saying will happen. Because people ask me, what do you mean a stillness is doing nothing? Then what you do, you're just there and you still. And I said, no, a stillness and movement are dancing together. You just have to learn the rhythm. Balance. That's the key.
Isn't that a beautiful image? Stillness and dancing, find the balance and the rhythm. We're going to have some practical meditation in a short while, but we thought it'd be nice to see if there were any questions that anyone here has got. I don't know if we've got a microphone we can take around, or you can maybe borrow one of the microphones here. It's a chance to ask Ingrid about any issues in your life that you would like some clarity about, or any questions about the afterlife and what happens to us when we die. You know, Ingrid has given a lot of these things deep thought. So is there anyone that would like to ask a question? Yeah, we've got this one here.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sister, for sharing your experience. I have two questions, actually, not one. The first question is, it is called like, right, like in a human life, it is called like death is the biggest fear everyone has. And the question is that because you have had those three experiences near death, do you still have the fear of death? Yes or no? As I in practicing the similar Raj Yoga practice, which I analyze and just wanted to clarify that the fear of, we all know, everybody in the human being knows there is a death. But I think more important is that they're not fear of the death, but how the death will be. That is because fear of unknown is the biggest one, rather being going there. So because you had that experience near to the death, do you have now the fear of death or no? If yes, then why? If no, then why?
Perfect. I love that question. And I'm going to give you a story. So I hope to make it short, but just to prove, because one thing is to believe that you don't fear death, and one thing is to prove it. So I have to tell you that after my near-death experiences, I do not fear death. But again, one thing is to believe that, and one thing is to know it. And I had the possibility to verify that this is true. And it happened through a really, really terrifying experience. But what happened is I was in this beach, and I went with a friend to snorkel. And I want to make the story short, but this area was made by small areas of beaches that went like in a cove. We were done with the snorkeling day, and we were about to go home when suddenly, we were just the only two in the whole place, when suddenly 3 men appear. And it's this sense that you know that they don't mean well. And we're like, oh, and then, yeah, they didn't mean well. So they push us back to the beach because we had to kind of, this was like an enclosed beach. So we had to go through like some rocks to get out of this beach. They came through the corner, they pushed us back to the beach, and they grabbed my friend and they tied his hands back. And then they pushed him, and then they took all our belongings, and now we realize that they just don't want just the belongings, they want more. And then my friend started screaming, don't hurt her, leave her alone. And then they put a broken, they were about to cut his neck. The scene was horrifying. Imagine a moment when you know you're going to be destroyed, raped, killed, you don't know the unknown. Like you're saying, imagine fearing some moment like that. And then I didn't want to see the brutality of the scene. So I turned my head and I looked to see the ocean. And at that moment, the ocean is so calm. The sun is hitting the water. So imagine the contrast, that brutal scene with that beautiful scene. And at that moment, I have been meditating since I was 8 years old. At that moment, the only thought that crossed my mind was, today is a good day to die. I completely surrender. Like, I just felt the sense of what is to happen is to happen. Fear was gone. And then at that moment, one of the guys pushed me, and now I'm lying on the ground. But I was completely empty of thought. See, now I'm not creating a story in my mind. I'm not saying this is going to happen or not happen, nothing. I could not even feel the weight of his body. And then I'm lying on the ground now, and he's about to rape me. And at that moment, I grab his face. And imagine a woman in that state should be screaming, no, why are you doing this to me? No, I was calm. And then when I put his eyes in my eyes, I said, dear, don't do this to me. And he stood up. He pushed like a, and he stood up and he said to the other two, we are leaving. We're leaving. They didn't even fight him, they left. And then I untied my friend and I said, we have to go because they're coming back. I had even that certainty. But this was an area, like I said, it was hard to get out of this area. So we said we cannot go there because they left through there. The other side was not possible. We had to climb these rocks. We were young, we climbed the rocks. We went to the top. And then I said, lower your head. We lowered ourselves down and they came back. And they're looking for us and we're hiding. And my friend was like what we will consider an atheist. And he started to say, how did you know? Why did they leave? How is this possible? And I say, if you didn't believe in guardian angels, this is your day. And it completely changed this guy. He became another being. And then after that, we were able to just leave the scene, and we were rescued by went to the road, we were rescued by some divers. We were taken to the police, and we were the first people to be able to identify, because I saw the tattoos, everything, these three guys, and we were the first one that did. These people have been committing many murders. We were the first survivors. So, but the most important thing, answering and going beyond your question, was the realization that there was not fear, and that when you're beyond that state of the narrative of the mind, what I knew is you cannot kill me. You can kill this body, but not me. I was so powerful. I was in the state of power. So when my voice came out, let me tell you, when I'm looking at this guy in the eyes, there was a moment in which I did not see the killer. I didn't see the robber. I saw his soul. And I saw us as equal. And I don't know what he saw, but it has to be so powerful that everybody left. And I saw how his layers fell, like his conditioning, everything. I just was one with this guy. So look what happened when there's no fear. We're super powerful beings. When we know that we're eternal, when we know we cannot be killed.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sharing. And what I understand, you're saying also accept unconditionally, so that the fear of unknown is not suffering, rather you accept unconditionally and just stay on that.
And you know what to do. Acceptance, go to that, when you, like I said, when you go to the place of silence, you know what to do. And that moment, knowing what to do was that expression. It could be something else. See, it's not inaction. It's that from the place of wisdom, you take the correct action.
Okay. Just changing the mood here. Second question. The childhood accident which happens with you with water, did it actually make you go towards the scientist on oceanography?
Oh, thank you for that question. Yeah, people ask me, how could you become a marine scientist if you drown? That doesn't make sense. And I said, that was amazing. That's another incredible thing. And I said, because drowning brought me to see the light. To me, drowning was like, look what I found there. So I actually became a scuba diver, professional scuba diver. Because I became because I wanted to explain, I wanted to know how this happened. I wanted to find a way to explain everything. Curiosity brought me to look for science, because I also have a very logical and analytical mind. So how can I find a way to find answers? So I started to investigate, study. And I was only 4 years old when my parents brought me to see the ocean for the first time. And I was so mesmerized that I said, someday I'm going to know what is under that blanket. And when I now wanted all the books, I wanted to know everything about the ocean. And when I was 5 years old, and I went to my dad and I said, when I grow up, I'm going to be a marine scientist. And that was the funny part. He's like, where did you come up with this? Because how could you even know that that career exists? I was 5 years old. Then he's like, okay, that's what you want to do. That's what you will do. So for me, yeah, science, it was like the way to explain things.
It's very easy to see when listening to your life story how all the different experiences had their purpose, had their meaning,
Yeah.
even the dark times, the difficult times. have brought you to this place where now you're carrying the message of connecting to the light. But, you know, each of us can look back on our own lives and do the same thing and see how everything that has happened, even if it was really hard, it enabled us to find something within ourselves that has made us who we are. And, you know, everything happens for a reason. And if you're on a path of wanting to deepen your understanding of spiritual things, the desire to do that, you will find what you're looking for. Have that thought, ask for help, take notice of the signs around you that are perhaps guiding you on your journey and on the next steps of what you have to do. And that was a very powerful story you just shared with us. And can you, before we go into meditation, just say a little bit more about your relationship with the beings of light, and how do we make the light meaningful for us in our lives? You've made reference of the divine. Are you seeing the divine as part of what you experienced in that realm of light? And how do you communicate with that? And how does that communicate with you?
You know, first, I want to start by saying that people ask me many times, how you know those beings are good? How can you trust what is in the other side? And that's a very important question.
It is.
Because there comes the answer. I said, anyone in this realm or in the other realm that come and tell you, I am your guru, I am your teacher, I am your everything, I say, run and run fast. But everyone, anyone that come and tell you, you are the teacher of your own temple, anyone that guides you to look within, that's the real teacher. That's the real guide. That's the being you have to listen. And that's been my relationship with all the beings that I have encountered. They always guided me to look within. And since I was very little, the message was, do not believe what we say. Experience it yourself. Go within, find the answers within. So that has been my journey in that sense. And the way to get there and to establish that connection, because people say, how you summon them, how they summon you, say, no, that. Imagine that absolutely every wave of radio, TV, internet, everything is here and now. But you need the correct dialing, the correct antenna, you need to even have the radio plugged to some electricity to connect. So before you can connect with anything, you have to reconnect with your own self. So do the work of quiet the mind, do the work of experience gratitude, elevate your vibrational frequency. What means that? Elevate your vibrational frequency. Go back to love. Go back to the light that you are. Go back to peace. Go back to your center. And from there, you start having the possibility to receive insights, to connect, to listen to that music that is here. But what we cannot listen if the radio is not in the correct, the dial is not in the correct place.
It's amazing hearing Ingrid speak. Anyone who's here who's practiced Raj Yoga, you're almost using the exact same analogies that we use when we teach the meditation, that, you know, the radio waves for any radio station, they're in the atmosphere, they're in the air, but we need to have a device and we need to tune. And this is in the old days before digital radio. You have to tune the dial, and then when you get the right frequency, then you can hear the radio. And it's the same with our connection with the divine source. Is, you know, the love, the energy is there all in this space, but in order for us to feel it, we have to tune in and find the right frequency. And once we do, you connect to that and you can experience it and draw it into your life, and it becomes part of your everyday life. So we're absolutely on the same page there. And do you have like a regular practice? Is that something that is important to you, that you make time every day to sit quietly and find that frequency and tune in?
I do. And I actually wake up every day. I wake up at 3 in the morning. And people saying, when people call that insomnia, I said, no, that's the opportunity to talk to God. Because it's when the mind is quiet. That's the moment. And then later you can sleep. But I said, that's the moment to quiet the mind. So I have that moments that I use when I wake up in the middle of the night and I just stay there in presence. And then I get up, I do my practice. Now I sit and I do my meditation. But there's one thing. I said, we have to do the meditation after the meditation, the practice after the practice, the retreat after the retreat. So I continue throughout my day. So I said, God, don't let me forget you. And then every moment I can, I am in remembrance. I am in remembrance. And then when I don't remember, and instead of getting mad at me, I said, good job, you forgot. You're aware that you are aware. See, or you're aware that you were not aware. And then that's my practice. That's my practice. And, you know, I want to give a teaching that I received about the quieting of the mind. There was a vision I had. And in this vision, there was a lake. And the lake was peaceful, quiet. And then there was a being of light holding a rock. And then my first thought is like, oh, no, I see that wants to disturb the water by throwing this rock. And I said, oh, no, don't. It's so peaceful. Please do not disturb the water. And then the being of light is all naughty and he grabs the rock and tosses it in the water. What is my expectation? That of course there's going to be this big disturbance. And the moment the rock touches the water, it goes through and nothing happens.
No ripples.
No ripple, no disturbance. I was shocked. And the being of light said, this is the way someday you have to be. And no matter the size of the rock, there will not be disturbance. But he says, but if you think about it, the water is feeling the rock. It's not denying it.
Mm.
See, so it's not reject. What happens is the water is able to be present through it. It's not bypassing. It's using what is in the way as the way. So whatever is happening make you more present. It fuels your awareness. So the rock went through and I am like in awe. And then the being of light said, why do you think the human body is made of 70% of water? Learn to keep your inner water calm. So that's what I do throughout the day.
So the teaching from that is, no matter what comes to us in our life, don't let there be any ripple or disturbance in your state of being. Let it come, but let it not disturb you and create ripples. Well, that sounds like a lifetime's work to me.
I'm not there yet. I'm working on it too.
We're working on
I'm
it.
working on it. But it's like, how can I? But you know what is the thing?
Yeah.
The more you are aware, the more you practice. I said, people, how you know you're waking up? Because you suffer less. Because you're able to realize, I'm falling. You get up faster.
Mm.
You get up faster. You get up faster. That is what you get from this. Is the efficiency of getting up faster. So it's worth it. It's worth to wake up because you become more intelligent, you become more wise, you become more peaceful, you become more joyful, you become more efficient, you suffer less. Who doesn't want to wake up?
Mm-hmm.
So that is.
because it actually takes a lot of energy. If you have a strong reaction to something, you get angry and upset and shake your fist and your heart starts going and your blood pressure goes up, and it takes a long time to come back down, whereas just learn to notice it, but not let it get into you.
Yeah, and if it gets into you, be compassionate.
Be compassionate. Yeah.
Say, okay, yes, this got me this time. But use it as the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Next time.
Exactly. So you become a master of it. You know, I said this. An awakened being, imagine that the ocean produces wave. An awakened being is not the one that wants to stop the nature of the ocean from producing waves. That is not awakened. An awakened being is the one that learns to surf the waves. The one that knows, oh, how can I use what is in the way as the way? And guess what? You're not going to start with the wave in Hawaii because you're going to definitely have a bad time. You have to start with the small waves. Don't start with your greatest problem. How can I solve the little things? So every day you pick something. Every day you pick a little thing, an emotion that is hard, something that is difficult, and then you build up until someday you become the master of the waves. And I said this to people, if you are the master of the waves, you're going to sit at home and never want to surf another wave? No, you're going to look for bigger ones because it's the way to prove your mastery. So little by little, you start realizing, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity. You change the way you perceive things. You know what is a miracle? A change in perception. The moment you realize that wave is not there to drown me, that to show, to teach me to be a master, it changes everything.
I feel like we've had an ocean of waves today, so many points to absorb, and, you know, hearing from your experience, you know, the master of all these experiences. So what I'm taking from that example is, you know, we can't change the fact that there are going to be waves, but we can change how we respond to them.
Exactly.
And we can learn to ride them. We've got another question over here. Yeah, just before our meditation. Thank you.
And I'll learn to then or maybe she's flat.
It's a good question.
That's very good, very good. And that's the part where we need the self-observation. If you realize that there's something that is actually bringing trouble into your life, then you start observing yourself. And you start paying attention. And you start becoming the observer of yourself. And then, yeah, it sometimes requires that we give up things and we make modifications and we make changes. But you know, when you start feeling good, when you start doing practices in which you start feeling good, you say, why not to feel good? See, sometimes it's very hard to, when we're talking in terms of the cortisol, to change the chemistry just by saying, I don't want to, or I want to give up this. But you start doing the practice of gratitude. And by, you know, I say, you don't let go, it lets you go.
When you're trying to give something up.
Yeah, because you start creating a new inner environment. And the things that were not, it's just you don't want to do it anymore. So it lets you go. It releases you. And you say, yeah, it just doesn't fit anymore. I don't feel aligned with this. And you start moving away. But important thing is to start with the practices and I make it fun. Like I said, every time you're thinking a negative thought, catch yourself thinking it. Make it fun. Do it every day you're driving the bus or you're in the car or you whatever. Make that game. I'm going to call in my mind 3 things that I feel grateful for. 3 simple things. So when you catch yourself thinking negative thought, like, oh, 1, when I'm taking a shower, oh, that's so good. Look what you did. you start releasing hormones of well-being. So now you don't need that cortisol in your system. You don't need to call for bad experiences, bad habits. You don't. But it's all about creating a new inner environment. You know, talking about gratitude, the being so light said to me, you don't imagine how grateful everyone would be if you realize that for you to exist, trillions and trillions and trillions of subatomic particles have to be in agreement. You are divine. Those particles could agree to be anything else. These atomic particles chose to be you. Imagine starting from there. When I have the water, I'm like, oh, trillions and trillions of subatomic particles decided to be this water so I can drink it? Wow. Or a pen, or this. Somebody that was being creative, connected with the creative mind of the universe, thought about this, and particles agreed to be this. Wow. See, this start changing everything. Now you're creating an inner environment that is going to call, I say, love life, and life will love you back. Whatever you're sending is what you're receiving.
So the practical from that is, if you want to bring about change, don't make the thing that you want to change something that you're in opposition to.
Exactly.
Don't set up a kind of like, okay, I'm going to be stronger and beat you and conquer you. Make it into a friend, make it into a game, appreciate what it was doing for you in your life and how it helped and supported you, and send it on its way with love and gratitude, and that you don't need that anymore, and invite in something to take its place that you feel will be more beneficial to you.
Yes. Yes.
And see how the world has organized itself to support you and bring you what you need. And for all of you, has brought you to this place today where you've been able to hear the amazing stories of Ingrid, and thank yourself for bringing yourself here. And I thank you, Ingrid, for bringing yourself here as well and sharing so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow, thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for being here. Without you, it's not us. So we would not be sitting here if you guys were not here. So it's all together. We're doing this all together.
But what I love about being with Ingrid is someone who's teaching from their own first-hand experience. You know, there's so many people you can sit and listen to who've studied books and theoretically got a grasp of something, but to have had a direct first-hand experience and speak from that place is so valuable. So I hope you've really taken something that you can really work with in your life and bring more joy to you, to those around you, and hopefully it will reach the world, and eventually the world will become a better place. So we're going to do our little bit now to make the world a better place by having a few moments of conscious awareness of this present moment. And it would be nice if we could both do a little kind of speaking of our own meditation experiences in this moment. Is that okay with you, Ingrid?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do we want a little background music?
Yes.
Just some quiet background music, if that's possible. And if I go first and then you can follow. So I just invite you to take a deep breath. Ingrid talked about having one breath of awareness. We draw in that pure light and we breathe out anything that is no longer serving me. And another breath to bring myself fully present into this moment. And I'm aware that at the heart of my being There is stillness. There is silence. My original nature is that of peace. Peace is who and what I am. I am a being of light, of pure consciousness. I can never die as the soul. Soul is eternal. And I loosen my connection and attachment to this physical body. And I feel the freedom of being able to travel in the vehicle of my thoughts. I feel the light of awareness. There is light all around me. I connect with this realm of light, filled with the energy of pure love. In this region of light, I feel such joy. I feel happiness. I feel bliss. I feel expansion. This state of being feels so natural. In this awareness, all is well. As well. All is well. Om Shanti. And now, Ingrid, I invite you to share your thoughts in the meditation. So if we can keep the music going, that would be lovely.
And I invite the light of gratitude into my life. The very fact that this ground is holding us is already an act of love. And we allow the light to bathe our entire being. And we call it by remembering any moment that bring joy, that bring appreciation into my life. A little water when I was thirsty, a hug when I was sad, a warm bed when I was cold, food when I was hungry. Every moment I can evolve that remind me how the light of love and gratitude elevate my vibrational frequency is welcome. And I swim in that light. And I fill my entire being with that light of love and gratitude, and share it with the world. Share it with the person that is sitting next to me. I share it with my family, with my community, with God. And that's a reminder that despite any challenge, there's always room for love. There's always room for connection. There's always room for peace. One conscious breath, one sip of the divine when drinking your cup of coffee, your cup of tea. It's all we need to remind ourselves that the divine is always present. Gratitude is all I feel for this moment of communion with all of you. Communion with God. Communion with myself. You are a divine being.